My waitress leaned in and whispered, "Don't drink that," while my son and daughter-in-law raised their glasses to toast my birthday. I felt the kind of stillness only a 66-year-old mother earns, the kind that turns hurt into focus. I smiled, turned my napkin as if blotting lipstick, and in one quiet motion traded the stems, no clink, no fuss, then only let the wine touch my lip. 5 minutes later, the room shifted, and I understood this was not a misunderstanding, but the first page of a much bigger story. Before I continue the story, please subscribe to the channel and leave a comment letting me know where you're watching from. My name is Marlene Duarte, and I'm 66. I never imagined my 66th birthday would be the night a stranger's whisper clipped the fuse on my family's quiet deceit. It was a Friday in East Austin when my son Damien opened the door to Giovanni's on 7th. Amber bulbs glowed over the patio. Inside, forks chimed and the air smelled of buttered garlic. Nothing fancy, I'd told him, just dinner and respect. He smiled like a boy who still wanted to please his mother. Carla, my daughter-in-law, moved ahead of us with a quick stride and a brighter smile, the kind you put on for a camera. The host tucked a tiny paper bag with a candle by the ledger. "Happy birthday, ma'am." We were led to a two-top near the kitchen pass, an honest table where I could see plates slide beneath heat lamps and hear servers call corner. Seeing what's coming steadies me. Our waitress arrived with a notepad and a steady gaze. "I'm Mora. Welcome." She looked at me, not through me. Carla answered anyway. "She needs water, no ice, and the senior menu if you have one." Damien chuckled easy and practiced. "I'll sign for Mom, it's faster." The table beside us went quiet in that way people do when they're listening, but don't want to look like it. I kept my expression soft. "Regular menu is fine," I told Mora. The wine list landed like a test I'd studied for. "Let's toast," Damien said, eyebrows up. "Just a sip," Carla added. "It's her birthday." When the bottle came, I watched without staring Mora's left hand on the punt right hand steadying the neck. First pour to Damien, second to Carla, third left near my plate. 3 clean red circles, 3 thin stems. I noted the order the way I note where I put my keys. That small private vigilance you learn after a long life of paying attention. Carla leaned closer to Mora, voice a notch too loud. "We're following a low cognition protocol with my mother-in-law. She gets overwhelmed." Damien laughed as if that softened it. "I'll handle her paperwork." Heat crept up my neck, the old pricking kind that says you've been set small in public. I kept my mouth gentle. The nearby table glanced over. I steadied the napkin in my lap so my hands wouldn't show the tremor that comes from being managed. "I'm fine," I told Mora. "Regular menu is perfect." Mora returned with an extra side plate I hadn't asked for. Her eyes found mine for a half-second longer than strangers owe. She wiped the edge of the table, her wrist brushing the coaster near my glass. "Anything else?" "We're good," I said. The touch felt deliberate, a stitch instead of a smudge. Something in me sat up the part that notices when the house clicks at the wrong hour. The note arrived as plain as a receipt. While I told Damien about the neighborhood library and the ache in my knees, that yoga mostly fixes a folded scrap slid to rest against my bread plate, I kept talking heat advisories, Mrs. Talbot, who returns books 2 days late, while my fingers tucked the paper beneath the napkin. Carla scrolled her phone. The room sharpened shaker at the bar forks on porcelain, a birthday song to my left. "Excuse me," I said. "Restroom." The mirror told the truth about restaurant lighting. It finds every line you've earned and refuses to apologize. In the stall, I unfolded the note. "Don't drink that. 4 words, no signature." I let my breath count itself 1, 2, 3, 4, and replayed the poor order. Damien, Carla, me. I saw the angle of each stem the way my glass sat a hair closer to the edge. A sliver of anger warmed my chest, not a blaze of pilot light. I slipped the paper into my cardigan pocket and watched my face settle back into calm like a pond after a tossed stone. Back at the table, the music hadn't changed, but the air felt thinner. Carla's thumb kept time on her phone. Damien flagged the bar with a small wave that still knocks at my heart. "Ready to toast, Mom?" he asked. Almost, I said, easing my napkin so its corner kissed the line between the 3 glasses, a tiny white triangle touching stem, stem, stem. I moved my water an inch toward my right hand and set my palms in my lap to keep them from telling secrets. "Tell me about work," I said to Damien, a redirect that always loosens his shoulders. He reported in that deepened voice men use when they're trying on competence clients, countertops, budgets. I nodded and lifted my gaze once to the wall clock above the door. 7 minutes to 7. The folded paper thumped at my hip like a small heart. I let my hand hover near the base of my glass without touching it. Choosing where not to place your fingers is its own kind of boundary. The staff dimmed the lights to sing for another table. The chorus pushed the rest of the room back so our corner felt like a stage. I thought about the labels I've collected this year: fragile, forgetful, lucky to have help, and the way I've let some pass without a fight because peace sometimes costs less than correction. The note's edge pressed my palm through the fabric, a square reminder. My spine met the chair's back like a decision. Amber returned. The stems caught it and made red stars. Damien lifted his glass grin easy. Carla drummed the table, her rhythm the measure of impatience. Maura glided past with a tray, eyes on anywhere but us, which told me she was looking. I slid my napkin 1 smooth inch and fixed on the second hand of the clock. The espresso machine hissed. Laughter rose and fell. A plate met wood with a soft, certain sound. Something in me clicked into position, a gear that had waited all year to engage. I smiled, counted down from 5, and let the room believe I was only savoring the moment. The glasses met with a gentle ring, and I moved exactly once. A breath, a turn of linen between my fingers, the small choreography a mother learns from years of setting tables and smoothing storms. The hum of Giovanni's narrowed until it felt like a tunnel. Clink, hiss, laughter blurred at the edges. Damien's smile was easy, uncomplicated. Carla's fingers kept time on the wood tap-tap next to the candle she'd slid toward herself. My stem sat where I'd meant it to be, close to the salt. Hers lived in the glow. I lifted my napkin as if to dab at lipstick I don't wear, rotating the square a quarter turn, the motion covering the slide of 2 bases an inch and back. My wrist pivoted once. No clink, no scrape. The stems traded places like 2 dancers crossing stage in blackout. My eyes never left my son's. "To Mom," he said, voice warm, proud. I tipped the glass and let the Cabernet perfume touch my mouth without taking it in. The smell, black cherry cedar rose, then sat on my tongue like a thought I didn't speak. We tipped and sat down. Damien drank like celebration. Carla followed, swallowing with a show of restraint that still read as hungry. My hand stayed loose around the stem, my napkin edge tucked over my thumb so no one could read the tension. I glanced up at the wall clock. The second hand swept steady. I counted my breath the way my physical therapist taught me, 4 in, hold 4 out. 1 minute, the room returned to itself. Forks, scraped plates. Someone sang along to the oldies station under their breath. 2 minutes, Carla's eyes drifted back to my glass and away satisfied. She believed I'd join them. 3, I replayed the pour the switch. The waitress's look, the folded square now a weight at my hip. Each step held. I asked Damien about the backsplash tile he'd picked for a client on South Lamar. He relaxed, talking with his hands the way he did when he was 8 and describing a science fair volcano. My heart lifted and hurt at the same time. Carla interrupted to suggest a stone cleaner brand loudly and let her hand settle near the base of her stem, possessive. The clock's second hand clicked past the 4-minute mark. I adjusted the plate a hair, aligning the breadcrumb trail like a compass. At 5, it happened like a glass hairline cracking you can hear before you see. Carla's laugh snagged. Her left hand found her midsection. The color leached from her cheeks, a soft fade that didn't match the room's warmth. The water glass juddered against its coaster when she reached for it. A dot of sweat gathered at her upper lip, though the air conditioning held steady. "I feel odd," she whispered the words, pressed small, and then she clamped her jaw like she could swallow the feeling back down. Damien half stood so fast the chair legs protested against the floor. "Babe." He looked to me, panic crowning in his eyes. "Call 911, I said evenly, the way you say left turn when teaching a teenager to drive. My palms were open on the table, the universal sign for, I'm not hiding anything. Maura was already moving one look at Carla at the glasses at the clock, and she snapped into a sprint I've only ever seen in nurses and mothers. I slid my chair back to give space, tucking my napkin to the side, not dropping it. Water. Cold cloth. I added, not loud, just certain. A couple at the next table went silent, then offered napkins with the generosity of people who don't know what else to do. I nodded thanks. Carla's breath shortened shallow and fast like a sparrow trapped in a box. "It's probably something I ate," she managed, and then a tremor chased through her hands. I didn't accuse. I audited. Who poured first? Who touched which stem? Where each glass had sat before and after, my napkin turned. The exact time Carla swallowed. The ring of moisture under her base ovaled toward the candle. The way the wine stain beneath her glass bled at the edge, a thumbprint hidden in burgundy. I cataloged the order of our bites of bread, the circle the coaster left on the polished wood. Even the small nick in the salt shaker's cap went into the ledger in my head. Later, those are the stitches that hold. "Stay with her," I told Damien, meeting his eyes so he could borrow my calm. "I'll secure what matters." The words made him flinch because they sounded like law, not love, and yet he stayed both hands on Carla's shoulders, murmuring her name, as if saying it could anchor her here. Around us, the room started paying attention. That's the thing about a restaurant: when one table becomes a stage, everyone else becomes audience, whether they mean to or not. Maura returned with water and a small tray. On the tray sat a white towel, a business card, and something that looked like a clear pouch, folded in half. Her glance touched mine, quick, a stitching needle pulling truss through. "Manager's on the way," she said. "Name's Travis." I pressed the towel to Carla's wrist, cool on pulse. "Thank you," I told Maura, which meant more than the towel. Sirens swelled, then distant, but coming. The sound braided with the music and the scrape of plates until the whole room felt tuned to one note. A man in a navy apron. Travis stepped to the edge of our table, soft-voiced eyes steady. "I'm here to help," he said already, unzipping a clear plastic bag the size of a paperback. He had a clipboard tucked under his arm. "Procedures." Good. Procedures mean no one can say later that it was chaos, and memories played tricks. Time, I asked, without looking up from Carla's face. 7:12, he answered, checking the wall clock and repeating it for his own pen. "We'll document everything." I placed 2 fingers above the pale ring where my glass had not been and let him see the deliberate space. He nodded once, understanding the statement without me making it out loud. Carla's breath hitched. Damien said her name again, soft, desperate. I wanted to touch his cheek the way I did when he was little. I kept my hands visible still. Maura handed me the manager's card. I slid it under the edge of my plate as if clearing clutter. The square in my cardigan pocket weighed more than paper. Around us, people pretended not to stare. The staff had formed a quiet perimeter that looked like service, but felt like guardrails. In the corner, someone hummed to soothe their own nerves. The air tasted metallic, or maybe that was fear pretending to be something practical. Before the paramedics reached our table, I asked for the time and for the glass to be sealed. Travis unzipped the clear bag, and the zipper sounded like a verdict. He dropped to a knee so we were eye-level calm as a librarian checking out finds. He set a clipboard on the edge of the table, then snapped on fresh gloves with the quiet pop of rubber. I kept 2 fingers hovering above the dry ring where my glass had never sat, and indicated with the smallest tilt of my hand which stem was mine and which was Carla's. No drama, just directions. He nodded once, following my eyes to each point like we were mapping a neighborhood. "Primary item," he said, for his own record voice steady. With gloved hands, he pinched Carla's glass by the stem, never touching the bowl, and lifted it cleanly into the clear pouch. The plastic swallowed the curve with a soft crinkle. Time 7:16. He wrote it down, numbers neat. I repeated for the record the order the Cabernet had filled each glass who touched, which stem first, who set them down, and when the toast rose. Maura stood just behind his shoulder, a quiet witness. Her chin lifted her eyes, doing the counting with me. I asked for the coaster and the napkin as well. "Separate bags, please." It came out gentle and firm, the voice I used when school administrators told me they'd lost a form. Travis didn't argue. He slid the coaster, still carrying the oval of condensation, and the linen square, with its faint wine kiss, into their own sleeves. I studied the stain's edge the way I used to read weather maps, how it feathered at one side, suggested a thumb, a tilt, a hurry. Those little things matter later when everyone claims memory is fluid and rooms are confusing. The paramedics arrived in a tidy rush, 2, then 3, rolling a cart that snapped open into a moving room. Damien stumbled back to make space, guilt bruising his face. I slid chairs aside with my hip, keeping the table surface undisturbed, the way you protect a child's puzzle from a gust. Maura appeared with a small trash can and folded towels, then stood at a soft angle that discouraged the curious from pressing in. We had a perimeter, without anyone barking orders. My hands stayed open where everyone could see them. That helps people breathe. "Mom, what is happening?" Damien asked the question, a thread pulled tight between us. He was whispering like the room might break if he spoke at normal volume. "We'll let the tests speak," I answered. "Stay with Carla." I let my hand rest on his sleeve, one heartbeat just enough to pass him steadiness. Then I returned to the clipboard and the bagged glass, like returning to a sink full of dishes after a phone call. There would be time to fall apart. Not now. Travis slid an incident form onto the table, the kind with boxes too small for real life. I gave my full legal name, my phone number, the timestamp of when the bottle appeared, when I excused myself when I returned. I described exactly what was done, not why anyone did it. No guesses. No labels. The paramedics asked standard questions. What did she eat, drink? When did symptoms start? And I answered for the table while Damien answered for his wife. In the corner of my cardigan pocket, the folded note warmed against my palm like a tiny engine. Maura caught my eye, the kind of look women use when they are about to do something brave and need you to meet them halfway. She tilted her head toward the pocket with a motion so small it could have been a stretch. I eased the note out between 2 fingers, keeping it shielded by my palm. "We should secure this," I said to Travis. He produced a small sleeve and watched as I slid the paper inside without exposing the writing to the room. He logged it as customer-provided potential evidence, then asked for a witness signature. Maura signed her hand steady. I signed beneath hers letters, neat like a promise. The restaurant tried to find its heartbeat again. The music returned at half volume. People went back to their noodles and conversation, but kept one ear pointed our way, the way you do with the weather radio when the sky has that greenish look. I took a sip of water, the first I'd allowed myself, and let it sit cold in my mouth before I swallowed. The birthday candle remained unlit beside the clipboard, its wick unburned, a little joke the room and I were in on together. No one sang. Nobody asked about cake. Travis read back the inventory like a pilot. 1 red wine glass, 1 coaster, 1 white linen napkin, 1 folded note. He photographed each bag with labels, the table layout, the wall clock, the salt and pepper shakers, even the candle, then stepped back and photographed the whole tableau. "Austin Police Department has been notified," he said. "They'll want these. A patrol unit will secure the transfer, then detectives if needed." I heard his words, but also heard the paramedic counting Carla's pulse, the soft beeps of a portable monitor, Damien saying her name as if names were life vests. "Do you need my statement now or at the hospital?" I asked. "If you can give the basics now, it helps," Travis said, and I did, keeping to facts that could be timed and touched. I did not say anything about my fear. I did not mention the years of being gently talked over or the small ways authority gets claimed at a table by those who speak a beat louder. Those belong to a different form, maybe a different room. The paramedics lifted the gurney rails with a click that felt final. They told Damien which hospital, St. David's, and I nodded, counting the distance in my head, counting the stoplights, counting how many breaths fit in the span of a siren run at that hour. I'm riding with her, Damien said. Good, I answered, because he needed permission he would have taken anyway. I'll follow and handle the calls. Another mother at another table touched my shoulder as I stood. Bless you, she said, and I let the blessing land without making it into a scene. Before they wheeled away, I made one last slow circle with my eyes over the table. Bread plate, butter knife, the ghost ring of moisture, the clean, dry circle under the spot where my glass had not been the small square of candle shadow. I pressed 2 fingers on the copy of the incident form Travis had left for me like sealing a letter. Outside, the sirens braided louder with the night. I looked at my son and then at the clock. The second hand didn't hurry for any of us. Before I let grief in, I made sure the truth had a clean path. St. David's doors slid apart and the gurney rolled through. Garlic and clatter vanished, replaced by antiseptic and the hum of vents. I gave intake my legal name, and birth date said I'd eaten at 6, said I took no daily meds. A band snapped around Damien's wrist. We were moved into a curtained bay, the kind that makes time flatten. Nurses woke machines. A pulse ox blinked red on Carla's finger. EKG stickers met skin with soft rips. Numbers rose on a screen heart rate oxygen, a clock in the corner, 1956. JL in ballpoint on the IV tape. I stacked those facts beside the ones from Giovanni's and let them cool. A physician stepped in, ponytail, clear eyes. I'm Dr. Lassie Nguyen. We'll get labs, electrolytes, toxin EKG, and watch her rhythm. What exactly did you drink? I didn't swallow the wine, I said. I let it touch my lips. My voice held like a sturdy chair. Good to know, she said. If anything shifts, tell me first. In the alcove, Damien began. Mom, I stay with her, I said, kind firm. Let the results speak. He nodded, jaw tight. The monitor printed a strip and the line became uneven teeth. A nurse paged Lacey back. Any cardiac meds at home, she asked, studying the jag. Not mine, I answered. I opened the door for the truth and waited. A tech arrived with a cooler, handed Lassie a paper. She scanned it and looked up. Your labs show elevated digoxin, she said, plain as weather. It's a heart medication. Therapeutic at low doses, dangerous high, especially with alcohol. Could a drink have been tampered with? Yes, I said. She didn't need a speech, she needed sequence. I gave it clean, the pour order, the restroom, the handwritten note, the 1-move switch, the 5-minute clock, the color draining from Carla's face. Please add this to the chart, I said. Note possible exogenous digoxin exposure. Patient's mother reports non-ingestion. I will. She typed at the workstation, reading back my words. Seeing them on the screen steadied me more than water could have. For a minute, the room was only beeps and a printer, chattering out labels. I asked Lacey if I had drunk it. She answered without drama. Depending on dose and kidneys, vision changes, profound slowing of the heart, dangerous arrhythmias. We have treatments, but it's a serious risk at your age. No pity, just truth. A nurse tapped the doorframe. Dr. Pharmacy left a message, possible early refills tied to this address. She said a pink slip by the keyboard. I slid it toward me. Another piece for later. Not a show, just a puzzle edge. Damien returned with a water cup and said only, I'm here. Good, I said. Contact, not a speech. A soft knock. Detective Marcia Alvarez, Austin PD. Plain clothes, level tone. We're coordinating with Giovanni's on sealed items. I understand you have a note and an account. I handed her the incident copy Travis had made and repeated my timeline in short sentences. Lacey stayed, and when the detective asked for wording, the doctor said, sample consistent with digoxin ingestion, co-ingestion with alcohol noted. Family member states non-ingestion. It sounded like 2 languages finally learning a phrase together. We'll pick up the bagged glass and coaster, Marcia said. If you recall who touched which object, write it now while it's fresh. I already have, I said. In my head, coaster halo condensation ring, smudge near the bowl waitress's wrist, brushing the coaster. Facts I could carry without shaking. Carla stirred, then settled. The nurse dimmed the lights one notch. Somewhere down the hall, a baby cried and then didn't. The fluorescent hush folded over the bay like a blanket you don't love but need. Lacey returned with a plan electrolyte replacement. Repeat levels. Observe overnight. "She's stabilizing," she said. Damien blew out a breath he'd been holding since the restaurant. Outside our curtain, a cart squeaked. An overhead voice called a code 2 units away. Life went on. Our story kept its lane. I put my palm on the counter where Lacey had typed my words and felt the lingering warmth in the plastic. Ordinary, but it mattered. The nurse who took the pharmacy message tucked a copy of the digoxin result into a folder for the detective. "We'll attach your statement to the chart addendum," she said. "Thank you," I said. 2 honest words. I asked Lacey one more thing. If someone wanted this blamed on age or nerves, what would they say? They'd say confusion, dehydration, stress. She replied, "Tonight the numbers don't agree." She gave a small nod that read as both clinical and human. Damien's fingers brushed mine. I let them rest there. It wasn't forgiveness, it was a bridge we might cross later. An overhead speaker requested cardiac meds from Central Pharmacy. Our curtain eased shut on its track. On the workstation, the chart refreshed, and a fresh line appeared with my timeline in simple language, time-stamped and signed by L. Nguyen, M.D. Outside, sirens slid along Red River and thinned into the night. Lassie stepped back in. "We'll move her upstairs when a bed opens. Detective will circle back after the restaurant handoff." She checked the monitor and then me. "You did the right thing." I did the necessary thing I said. In the next bay, someone laughed at a joke too tired for laughter. The ER kept breathing. I looked at Damien, then at the clock above the sink. I rested 2 fingers on the folder that held my statement copy and the pink slip with the pharmacy number. The chart now carried my voice, and for the first time tonight, it could not be talked over. In the morning, paper did what monitors had started. The APD interview room had the hum of an overworked vent, and coffee gone a little burnt. Detective Marcia set a small digital recorder between us and clicked it on. The red light blinked neutral as a metronome. I slid Travis's incident copy across the table, the list of sealed items, the timestamps, the note logged as customer-provided potential evidence. The pages made a soft fan as they settled. I folded my hands and let silence say I was ready. She began with the basics: legal name, address, contact relation to the patient. Then, "Tell me again, in your words, your actions, from 6:30 to 7:20. I kept to facts, not feelings, poor order. The bathroom, the folded note, the 1 clean switch, the 5-minute clock. She didn't interrupt. When I finished, she opened a thin manila folder and turned it toward me. Care Plan MM. The heading read in bold. Beneath it, printed emails, dates, times, and a count that formed its own rhythm. The word confused appeared 6 times over 2 months, each one tied to my name. The sender was Carla. The recipients were a pair of intake coordinators and a group thread with family support in the subject line. Mom didn't remember the garage code, again concerned about cognitive decline. She called Tuesday book club Wednesday church. She's getting more confused. A hot tide wanted to rise in me. I held the line. "Do you also have the attachments she cited?" I asked. Marcia tapped another page. "Some. Screenshots of texts, descriptions. I'm not asking you to respond emotionally. I'm asking for any corroborating information to the contrary." I pointed to dates. That Monday, I taught a senior tech class at the YMCA. 12 attendees signed the roster. I demonstrated 2-factor authentication and helped Mrs. Kruger reset her Apple ID. The same week, I notarized 3 documents for the neighborhood clinic's intake. Wednesday night was book club on purpose. It moved because of a storm. I drove Margaret home. "She'll say so." I kept my voice steady. She made notes, drew arrows between lines of her printouts. "There's a line here that says, 'We'll try to get her to sign a durable power of attorney next week. Priority evaluation.'" Marcia read aloud, not looking for a fight, just sounding the words. "That goes to an admissions contact at a facility outside Round Rock. I will not sign over decisions," I said, not sharp, not shaking. I am competent. She slid the recorder an inch closer to me and nodded. I repeated it for the record. I will not sign over decisions. I am competent. She had me initial each page of my written timeline. Thank you, she said, and closed the folder. We drove to Giovanni's next. The morning air on East 7th carried tortillas from a truck somewhere and the metallic lift of the sun. Travis met us at the back door with a key ring and a tired, decent face. I've got the CCTV, he said. It mirrored it off-site first thing. He led us through stacked cases of tomatoes to a small office where the monitors watch 3 camera angles. The hosts stand the bar, our section under amber lights. Travis pulled gloves from a box and logged into the terminal. On-screen folders opened to timestamps, 1855, 1910. An IT tech with a buzz cut mirrored the session to an encrypted drive, then stepped back, hands off the way you do, when the thing in front of you matters. Marcia asked me to narrate what we were seeing. At 1906, the bar camera showed a server lifting a California Cabernet. At 1909, the bottle reached our table. I described the layout as if it were a small map salt to my right candle, slightly left my coaster nearer the bread plate, Damien at my 1 o'clock, Carla at my 3. My glass closer to the salt, I said, hers to the candle. We rolled to 1911. There it was. Carla's left hand, palm down, hovered as Damien spoke to me. The tip of her index finger grazed the stem of my glass, a tiny touch casual on the surface, but the camera saw the lean of her wrist, the brief dip toward the rim. She withdrew, and the image kept breathing, like nothing had happened. But the timestamp, 1911-23, sat in the corner like a witness. A minute later, my hand moved the napkin and the stems traded places in one clean motion, eyes on my son, the way I had told the detective. Marcia didn't exclaim or praise. She froze the frame. We studied stillness, the slight smudge near the bowl of my glass, the condensation halo on the coaster that had been hers and wasn't anymore. Time code 19, 11:23, she said to the IT tech. Clip starting 10 seconds prior, ending 30 seconds after. Secondary clip of switch at 19:12:30. We made a third clip of Maura passing by her wrist, grazing the coaster as she wiped the edge. When she stepped into the office to give her statement, her posture was straight, her words small and clean. I wrote the note, she said. The woman at the table didn't drink. I saw the daughter-in-law watch her glass more than she watched him. No speculation, no flourish. She signed her name and the time. In the doorway, Damien appeared. His eyes were red. He didn't try to come in all the way. He looked at me, and I didn't let anger write on my face. Let the truth finish speaking, I said. He nodded and shifted a step back as if making space for a thing larger than both of us. We returned to the table of papers. Marcia sorted printouts with the Care Plan MM header, flagged phrases like priority evaluation and safety concern, and put a sticky note for subpoenas to the admissions contact. We'll pull message headers and IP logins, she said. If there was a campaign to establish incompetence, the pattern will show. Please place a hold on those emails, I added. Keys, passwords, medication cabinet at my house are secured. I changed 2 banking passwords last night. The pill organizer is locked. I can show you the photo log. Practical matters steadied me the way oxygen steadies a room. She brought the recorder back online for a final statement. I said my boundary again for clarity. I will not sign over decisions. I am competent. No one in the room argued with me. Travis printed chain of custody forms for the drive. The IT tech labeled the evidence with date-time camera angles. We powered down the console. The office returned to ordinary, a corkboard with staff birthdays, a shift schedule pinned by a dull pushpin. My phone buzzed twice in my purse. I glanced at the screen. First bank alert, unrecognized attempt online wire initiation. Then an email subject line from the insurer, beneficiary change attempted. Paper had spoken. Now money cleared its throat. The bank pinged first, then the insurer. My phone vibrated on the kitchen table in Muller, right where the morning light falls across the blue cotton placemat I bought with my first librarian paycheck. Unrecognized attempt, beneficiary change. Denied. The alert read formal as a knock from a stranger who knows your name. I steadied the phone. felt a faint tremor, and let the air leave my chest slowly. Not panic, focus. I dialed the bank's fraud line. A specialist came on voice, bright with training. I answered the verification gauntlet I'd built years ago, the passphrase about my mother's garden, the last four of the pantry account for church donations, the street I grew up on. "Thank you, Ms. Hale," she said. "I'm seeing a blocked request at 10:42 a.m. for a beneficiary change. Read the fields exactly as they appear." She did full name for the replacement relationship percentage, contact, email, one letter off mine. I wrote each line on a yellow pad and asked for the IP device type and timestamps. She couldn't give precise location without a subpoena, but logged a preservation note. "Add a permanent notation," I said. "No changes by proxy. Require in-person ID from me, only with signature and 2 government IDs. I'm adding no proxy signatures, primary only." Confirmation 8742G. It will also apply to wire transfers. Good. I forwarded the confirmation to Detective Marcia with last night's incident number. The insurer cleared its throat next. I signed into the portal. A banner waited. "Beneficiary change blocked pending spousal confirmation." I called their fraud unit and asked for the audit trail. The rep read the attempt login at 1046 browser version. Noted request opened, but not completed after the spousal prompt. I requested the device fingerprint and metadata be preserved under a hold tied to APD's case, and asked them to lock any change requests tied to my identifiers for 72 hours. The case number arrived by email minutes later. A soft knock at my door. Damien stood on the porch shoulders, rounded eyes searching. I handed him water and motioned to the bench beneath the live oaks. "We'll handle the money like adults," I said. "Facts, not excuses." He nodded, jaw tight. "She told me it was standard to get things ready. I didn't know about any of this until last night. Standard is my signature." I said, not my silence. He looked at the rim of his glass and didn't ask to come in. We let the wind chime speak for a minute. My phone jolted again. Credit monitoring, hard inquiry new. A financing company I have never used. Alarm is useful when it moves you. I opened all 3 bureaus, placed a security freeze, and added a 1-year fraud alert with my cell as the contact. I copied the reference IDs into the yellow pad, then into a 1-page ledger titled Saturday Financial Events. Time event contact case number. I paper-clipped it to Marcia's card. I escalated with the insurer to their investigations unit. Lock any change requests tied to my email, phone, or address for 72 hours. I said pending police follow-up. Understood. "We'll flag your profile at the enterprise level," the investigator said. "Any attempt will trigger a manual call-out to you." The email confirmation hit my inbox before we hung up. I saved the PDF to a folder named Evidence Finance and printed a copy for my file. The rep read back the masked device ID that tried to change my policy. I wrote it down in block letters and circled it. If a courtroom ever needed it, I wanted the paper to arrive before the feelings did. I logged the time in pen. I sent the ledger and the restaurant incident report to Gloria's firm. Her paralegal answered on the first ring. "We can see you Tuesday at 9. Bring ID originals of any will or POA in your notes. Email what you can ahead of time. You'll have it in 10 minutes. I sent the packet with a subject line that steadied me. "Revocation package, please prepare." Damien cleared his throat. "Do you want me with you Tuesday? I want you to hear everything I said, all the way through." He nodded. It sounded like a promise he intended to keep, and I held it loosely the way you hold a bird that needs air. Inside, I pulled the old metal lockbox from the pantry, still speckled with paint from the year I redid the kitchen. The key lives in a taped envelope behind the spice rack. I slid it free and turned it twice. Papers settled with a dry, trustworthy sound. I checked my original will, the durable POA I signed long before Carla, and the list of beneficiaries in my own hand. I placed 3 sticky notes across the top page: revoke, update, notify. I added a 4th to the folder that holds my deed and the little stack of account statements. I took photos of each document and dropped them into an encrypted folder, then printed a contact sheet for the police file. The house was quiet in the best way, not empty, not scared, ordered. We returned to the porch when the sun had shifted west. Damien set his glass on the rail. "I'll be there Tuesday," he said. "Good. Be on time." He managed a small, tired smile and stepped down to the path. I waited until he turned the corner, then opened a new message. "Subject revocation package. Please prepare." I typed again this time to myself as well as Gloria, because copies matter. By sundown, the money was quiet. By Tuesday morning, my signature would speak for itself. Okay. Gloria's office answered on the first ring, and the printer woke like a witness. By 9 a.m., Damien and I sat across from a glass desk that looked out over downtown, the frost film cut into straight lawyerly lines. I placed my yellow ledger, the hospital addendum, and the incident report in a neat stack. Gloria skimmed fast color tabbing as she went the rhythm of a pen against paper, steadying the room. First capacity, she said, eyes kind but unsentimental. She clicked the recorder on and asked me where we were, today's date, my address, the last 4 of my library pension. I answered easily. She asked what happened Friday night. I kept it brief, the pour order, the note, the 5-minute clock, the ER. When I finished, she dictated for the file client-oriented ×3. Coherent, consistent account, no evidence of confusion. Damien let out a breath I didn't realize he was holding. "Now we return your power to you," Gloria said. She opened a blank document and began to draft Revocation of Durable Power of Attorney, Amendment to Advance Directive, Notice of Non-Reliance to Third Parties. The sentences were spare and muscular, the kind I like, no lace, no wiggle. The language barred any reliance on prior instruments without my direct current consent. It listed where notice would go: banks, insurer, clinic, anyone who had been told a story about me I did not authorize. The notary arrived with a seal and a measured smile. She verified my ID against the originals, then slid the pages toward me. I signed my full legal name careful, and even the way my father taught me on a Sunday afternoon decades ago. The embossed circle pressed down with a quiet, satisfying click. Damien's jaw unclenched for the first time in days. It didn't feel dramatic. It felt right. Gloria turned to him. "One more thing," she said gently. "An affidavit of correction. Just facts." Damien read and nodded. He wrote his name, attested to dates he'd seen me teaching, notarizing, paying bills, making lists. He wrote that he had not consented to any proxy changes and would deliver copies of the revocation to anyone who tried to cite the old POA. No speeches, just ink. We built the notice packet. Gloria's assistant printed a service list with tracking numbers. Bank fraud team, Guadalupe branch manager, insurer fraud unit, my primary care clinic, the admissions coordinator whose email had shown up in Marcia's stack, and if needed, counsel for Carla. Envelopes lined up like small white houses. Gloria handed me a thumb drive with certified PDFs and 3 rubber-banded originals. "Carry one," she said. "Leave one at home. Give one to your banker." On speaker, Detective Marcia joined us from APD. She gave me an evidence email for chain linkage and read back the case number. I forwarded the certified PDF while she was on the line. "Received," she said. "This anchors your revocation to our file." It was a bridge between 2 worlds, civil and criminal, quietly laid. By late morning, we were at my Guadalupe branch. The manager led us to her desk and read the revocation lips moving, taking it seriously in the way that makes you forgive a dozen ATM fees. She scanned the notarized pages, flagged my profile, no proxy signatures, in-person principal only, 2-factor phrase set to a line only my sister would say. "Will require your ID," and the phrase "for any change in person," she said. "No phone approvals." I signed the internal form. The system chimed. At the branch exit, we paused by the row of safe deposit boxes. I touched the cool metal and remembered bringing Jasper's baby bracelet here years ago after the memorial. A small life, a small key, and my promise to keep what was mine in order. Today felt like that, no fireworks, just doors clicking shut way they should. Outside traffic hissed on Guadalupe students hurried past with coffee, and I exhaled slowly. I hadn't noticed I was rationing. I texted Gloria a thank you and saved her number. We mirrored the action at the insurer. The fraud unit logged my attorney's contact, attached the revocation to my file, and placed a manual review hold on beneficiary requests. Any attempted change will route to legal hold, the investigator said. I felt relief without float. The ground was still the ground. It was simply mine again. Back home for a quick lunch, I opened my patient portal and uploaded the revocation. I messaged my primary care provider, please disregard any prior care authority claims by third parties unless verified directly with me. I attached the ER addendum Lacey had placed and the pharmacist callback number from the night before. Paper was doing what paper does when you point it like a compass. On the porch in the noon sun, Damien stared at his shoes. I handed him a sandwich and a napkin. 2 sentences, I said. I am the principal. You're my son. He nodded. Yes, Mom. It landed without sting or sugar. Sometimes love is a line on a page you refuse to sign for anyone else. The porch creaked an old and faithful sound. My phone buzzed as we cleared the plates, the hospital requesting a family meeting for late afternoon. The nurse's voice was polite, even warm. Carla is asking to speak with you, she added, as if the sentence needed padding to stand. I looked at the embossed seal drying on my copy of the revocation. I didn't feel powerful. I felt aligned. My signature was dry when her voice tried to rise over mine. The family meeting room smelled faintly of antiseptic and stale coffee. I chose the chair that faced the door, straight-backed and deliberate. Damien sat on my right, his shoulders slumped but present. Before anyone spoke, I set the rule down as plainly as I could. One at a time, I said, "That's how we'll do this." Dr. Lacey nodded, folding her hands over the folder in front of her. Her voice carried the weight of clinical fact. The tox results confirmed digoxin in combination with alcohol. The patient has been stabilized. Everything is charted. Today is about clarity, not speculation. Carla shifted in her chair, her hospital gown peeking from under a borrowed sweater. It was supplements just misunderstood. She started, her tone pitched like an excuse. I lifted my hand palm open, steady. Please wait until the physician has finished. Her lips pressed tight. I didn't raise my voice, but the air in the room tilted toward me. I leaned forward, laying the timeline out clean. 5 minutes. That's how long it took. At 7:05, the glasses touched. At 7:10, the first symptoms appeared. The wall clock was behind Damien's shoulder. My glass was by the salt, hers by the candle. I did not drink. The words landed cold. No accusation, just time-stamped truth. Carla's face flushed. "You're twisting," she tried again. I paused, breathed, and repeated the last line, slower, firmer. I did not drink. The silence that followed belonged to me. Even the social worker adjusted in her chair before speaking. Mrs. Marlene, there were prior notes of possible confusion. "Can you address that?" the social worker asked gently. I slid a folder forward, the embossed seal from Gloria's office still crisp. My revocation is signed and my capacity evaluated. That record stands. The door opened just then, and Detective Marcia stepped in a thin folder in her hand. She placed it on the table like it weighed 1,000 pounds. For the record, she said Maura's affidavit notarized yesterday, and 2 CCTV stills. She slid copies into the hospital chart. Black and white images froze the moment Carla's hand grazing my glass stem, the timestamp sharp in the corner. Evidence didn't need speeches. Damien exhaled, shoulders trembling. He turned to Carla, his voice stripped of everything but plain truth. "We will let the evidence speak." He didn't glance at me for permission. He didn't need to. Dr. Lassie closed her folder. The record will reflect suspected exogenous exposure. Access is restricted. No proxy decisions will be honored without the principal. Her pen scratched against the paper, sealing it into policy. In the hallway, after Carla hissed through clenched teeth, "You're ruining our family." I met her eyes calm as stone. Families don't run on poison. The words didn't need volume. They carried weight enough. The charge nurse caught me by the elbow as I stepped away. "Thank you for being clear," she whispered. She handed me a slip with the new visitor code. "You decide who enters." I nodded the smallest gesture, but inside I felt the ground steady under my feet. My phone buzzed before I reached the elevator. A voicemail flagged itself from the community pharmacist who'd been circling in the background since that first night. "I'm ready to speak on the record," the transcription preview read. "Early refills tied to your address." I saved it into a new folder on my phone, Audit Trail. Tonight the room heard me. Tomorrow the paper would add names. At 8:00 a.m. sharp, my phone rang once. I had already set my ledger on the kitchen table pen, aligned with the margin and the screen brightness up. The community pharmacist's voice was brisk but professional. "Mrs. Wallace. Before we go further, I'll need to confirm your date of birth and address." I answered each without hesitation, my handwriting steady in the margin of my ledger. Verification done. He exhaled quietly, as if he'd been holding something in for weeks. What came next was not rumor, not suspicion, but a record. He read directly from the intervention log multiple early refill requests for digoxin, plus another cardiac medication not prescribed to me, all tied to my home address. The requester was always female, always insistent, never me. She said she was calling on behalf of her mother-in-law, that the patient had trouble remembering doses, he explained. My stomach turned, but my pen moved calmly. Dates, times, initials. Each entry stretched back 2 months, overlapping with the very care plan emails Carla had spread like confetti. I asked one pointed question: who picked up the last filled item? He hesitated only to check the screen. It says here, curbside handoff, husband of patient. But the name logged, it wasn't yours, and it wasn't your late husband's either. I underlined that note twice in my ledger. A factual thread APD could pull, not an accusation, just another link in the chain. The pharmacist paused. "Do you want this released to law enforcement?" My answer was simple, yes. Case number 247931. Please mark it for Detective Marcia Austin PD. He promised a certified printout logs and POS notes, included uploaded by noon. I thanked him in plain words. No theatrics, just relief that paper once again was louder than anyone's spin. By mid-morning, I was at the pharmacy itself in a small consult room that smelled faintly of alcohol wipes and printer ink. A tech slid a patient-facing summary across the counter. I didn't need restricted fields, I only needed dates and SKUs. Each line confirmed what my gut already knew, orders I had not made tied to times I could account for elsewhere. I folded the sheet carefully and tucked it into my ledger, its edges already weighted with colored flags from Gloria's office. Back home, sunlight fell in a clean square across my kitchen counter. I opened my pantry and pulled down my pill organizer, the same plastic one I'd used for years, Monday through Sunday AM and PM slots. Mostly vitamins, some calcium, and the small round aspirin my doctor recommended for my age. I checked each compartment against the bottles in the cabinet, a librarian's instinct guiding me to match title with shelf mark. And then I froze. In the Wednesday PM slot, nestled among familiar tablets, sat one tiny pill I had never placed there. Pale round with the same beveled edge I remembered from nursing textbooks, the exact size and shape of digoxin. My breath stayed even, but my hand reached for a zip bag. I photographed the organizer, the bottles, the loose tablet. I noted the time and date. I didn't touch the pill with bare fingers. Evidence belonged preserved, not smudged by panic. Then I dialed Detective Marcia. Her voice was sharp awake. I reported the pharmacy anomaly, logged the curbside pickup, and now the pill mismatch. She dispatched an evidence tech, asked me to email the certified log once the pharmacist uploaded it. "Chain of custody continues," she said. I felt the phrase land like ballast in my chest. Damien appeared in the doorway not long after. His face was drawn, but he didn't flood me with apologies. Instead, he asked simply, "What do you need?" I answered just as plain witnessed the handoff. "That's all." He nodded, and for the first time his silence felt like respect rather than avoidance. While organizing email attachments for Marcia and Gloria, I found something I hadn't expected: an old voicemail file buried in our shared family email, auto-synced from Carla's phone weeks earlier. My thumb hovered over play. Her voice filled the kitchen, sharp and impatient. "We need to get the POA done this month." She's slipping. The phrasing was clear, the manipulation precise. She wasn't talking about groceries or scheduling, she was talking about my autonomy. I saved the audio, transcribed every word, labeled it S12 recovered voicemail. Another name added to the paper's growing list. By the time I sent the transcript and audio to both Marcia and Gloria under the subject line, "Supplement to case audio," the doorbell rang. Damien moved beside me, hands steady, not fidgeting. On the counter sat the pill organizer in its clean bag, my ledger open to the morning's entries. The doorbell camera flashed blue. When the APD evidence tech lifted the box clipboard under his arm, I realized the truth. Every ring, every ping, every page from here forward would carry a record. By early afternoon, the phone buzzed with an unknown number. My gut already knew the answer. The forensic chemist came on the line, routed through Detective Marcia's office. Mrs. Wallace. The pill from your organizer tested positive for digoxin, quantified at a full therapeutic dose. I wrote the word digoxin in all caps across the margin of my ledger. The tablet had a name now, no rumor, no shadow. At APD headquarters, the chain continued. I sat under the humming fluorescence of the property desk. An evidence tech slid a clipboard toward me. Initial here for receipt of property reference. The pill photographs, the lab report, the organizer. I signed once neat block letters. He logged return to secure locker, and the pen's click sounded louder than the room itself. Detective Marcia handed me a one-page lab summary. Black header typed lines, and at the bottom a photograph of the tablet against a white scale bar. I slid the copy into my audit trail folder, its spine already heavy with tabs, emails, bank logs, affidavits. Every page carried my survival in ink. Before I left, a digital analyst stopped Marcia in the hall. He mentioned a preliminary hit search terms pulled from a cloud backup associated with Carla's phone. He wouldn't give details yet, report pending. But the word search alone was enough to set my pulse steady. Not racing. If the pharmacy log was smoke, the device history would be fire. I detoured to St. David's walking corridors that still smelled of antiseptic and cafeteria coffee. Dr. Lacey met me just outside the nurse's station. Carla is stable. Discharge planning is under review, and we've added a policy note: no proxy authority without the principal. She didn't linger. She didn't need to. The facts spoke clean. In the hallway, Damien waited, hands stuffed in his pockets. His voice was low, stripped of defensiveness. I read the lab line twice. I looked at him square. "Then you understand why my rules exist." He nodded once. That was all. Progress didn't need speeches. Back at APD in late afternoon, Marcia called me into a small office. On her desk sat a stapled packet, fresh from digital analysis. She read aloud Carla's account had searched mixed alcohol and digoxin. How long to show confusion, declare elder incompetent Texas POA without consent Texas. Timestamp spread across 6 weeks, the same window as the pharmacy calls and care plan emails. My pen wrote only 2 words, pattern confirmed. Cold vindication, but no triumph. Then came another layer. Marcia opened a side file. 2 anonymous wellness reports filed to Adult Protective Services, naming you as confused and unsafe at home. Both came from a blocked caller. Both filed the same days those emails circulated. My jaw tightened. Systemic scaffolding, each brick meant to bury me alive. She asked gently if I wanted to add a victim impact note now. I shook my head. Facts first, feelings later. It wasn't that I lacked feelings. It was that paper and ink carried more weight than any speech. By early evening, I was home again, my kitchen bathed in a late amber light. I pulled the metal lockbox from the pantry, slid the lab summary inside, stacked neatly behind my revocation papers, bank confirmations, insurer holds. The lid shut with a clean metallic click. On the spine, I placed a label, Authority Current. On the shelf above the counter sat the unlit birthday candle from Giovanni's, white wax, untouched wick. I didn't strike a match. Instead, I opened my ledger and wrote one line. Alive because I did not drink. A sentence as simple as it was final. At 6:30 p.m., the phone buzzed again. Marcia's voice was steady. "Carla has requested a formal recorded interview. Counsel incoming. Tomorrow, 9:00 a.m. I glanced at the revocation seal drying in its sleeve at the folder marked Audit Trail at the candle that had never been lit. The red light glowed steady above the interview table. Detective Marcia gestured for me to sit behind the glass partition while Carla and her public defender settled across from her. The table was bare except for the recorder, a small notepad, and 2 pens. I folded my hands, resting them on the cool surface, and reminded myself of the rule I had carried since Giovanni's "No one speaks over me." Marcia began by reciting the case number, the date and time for the record. She reviewed Miranda advisements while Carla's attorney nodded stiffly, confirming his client's limited intent to provide a statement. My eyes stayed fixed on that red light. It didn't blink. It simply burned steady like a witness immune to spin. When Marcia asked about the 5-minute window after the toast, Carla shifted in her chair. She leaned into her script describing vitamins she'd been reading about online, how she had simply worried I wasn't getting the supplements I needed. But she avoided the one word that mattered most, digoxin. Her silence around it was louder than any denial. I wrote one word in my own notebook: omission. Then Marcia slid 2 glossy still photographs across the table. The timestamps from Giovanni's camera were sharp, the angles clear. One frame captured my hands folded neatly near the salt shaker. The other showed Carla's left hand hovering over my stemware, her wrist dipping toward the rim. Counsel leaned over, lips tight, but Carla muttered, "I was tidying?" The red light kept burning. Without pause, Marcia opened the digital forensics report. She read search strings and her crisp officer's voice mix alcohol and digoxin. How long to show confusion, declare elder incompetent Texas POA without consent. Texas. Each phrase landed like a stone on the table. Carla's eyes flicked left toward her attorney, then down to her folded hands. The silence after those terms was broken only by her own voice, raw and unguarded. I just needed her settled so we could move forward. None of this would have happened if she'd just signed. Her lawyer hissed, "Stop." But the red light glowed, recording every syllable. A partial admission, but enough to tether motive to conduct. Marcia moved next to the pharmacy anomaly log, reading the entries about early refills tied to my address, and the digoxin tablet recovered from my pill organizer. When asked if she handled my medications, Carla said only, "I help sometimes." Her tone was flat. Counsel placed a restraining hand on her arm. With that, Marcia ended the interview, stating for the record that copies would be available through discovery. Counsel gathered papers in silence. I let out a single breath, slow, controlled, then folded my notebook shut. In the hallway, Marcia spoke plainly. "We can file for an emergency protective order today." I nodded once. Gloria joined by phone, steady as ever, drafting the petition language that tied everything together: the revocation, the digital report, the pharmacy logs, the lab confirmation. At the courthouse clerk's window, I signed the affidavit. The clerk's stamp landed heavy in blue ink across the top of the temporary no-contact order. Service was directed immediately to the hospital and Carla's counsel. In one move, the law gave me the boundary I had drawn with my own hands for months. Outside, Damien stood waiting. He didn't ramble. He didn't cry. He just said 12 words I had longed to hear. "I'll follow your lead from here on, Mom." I gave him a single nod. No speeches, no embraces for the crowd, just a clean acknowledgement that the line had been redrawn. That evening, back on my porch, the cicadas buzzed and the air smelled faintly of pine polish carried from the courthouse. My phone lit up with a message from Marcia. "The DA likes the tape." I set the stamped order beside my metal lockbox, the same one holding the revocation and the bank freeze. The red light had done its work. Tomorrow, a gavel would learn our family's new rules. The courtroom smelled faintly of paper and pine polish. I sat just behind Gloria, my attorney, with Damien beside me for the first time in weeks. The judge called our case number and the assistant district attorney rose, laying out exhibits one by one, my revocation. The pharmacy logs, the digoxin lab report, and interview excerpts. No explanations, no drama, just paper entered into record. When the protective order came up for review, the judge signed without hesitation. 1 year, she said, the language echoing what I had already locked at my bank, an insurer in-person principle, only no proxy signatures accepted. It was more than paper, it was my boundary turned into law. I felt the relief, clean and steady, ripple through me. Then the ADA read out the charges: attempted poisoning, elder exploitation attempt, tampering with a consumer product. Each count carried its own weight, yet none felt exaggerated. Counsel for Carla reserved plea, a next date was set, and custody status continued. I didn't celebrate. I didn't cry. Justice doesn't need applause. It needs follow-through. In the aisle, Damien leaned close and whispered 3 words I had waited months to hear: "I believe you." I didn't hug him. I didn't need to. I simply nodded, the bond repairing itself in silence. Later, in a small conference room, Maura gave her formal statement. The ADA thanked her, calling her vigilance life-saving. I stepped forward and handed her a modest card I had written by hand. Your courage kept time for me. Her eyes watered, but she only squeezed my hand and smiled. That was enough. When it was my turn, I submitted my victim letter, 1 page typed, no sweeping declarations, just facts, boundaries, and a single closing line: I will not be spoken over again. The judge accepted it into the file. I knew right then that my silent line had become law. As Carla was led past with her attorney, no words were exchanged. I didn't look for eye contact. My eyes stayed on the floor tiles until the doors shut. Some stories don't end with confrontation. Some end with the refusal to provide more stage time. By late afternoon, I found myself at Hyde Park Senior Center. I wasn't there to relive my pain. I was there to turn it into guidance. I spoke plainly to the group how to freeze credit, how to lock accounts, how to ask for a capacity note and keep copies. Maura sat in the back row, quiet, giving me a small smile of encouragement. A widow raised her hand and asked about pressure to sign a power of attorney. I answered simply, capacity first, dignity, always put it in writing. The staff pinned up a resource list Gloria and I had prepared. No one applauded. They just nodded, taking notes. That was the impact I wanted. Outside the center, Damien walked me to my car. He offered to carry my lockbox, the one I kept all my originals in. I handed him the empty tote bag instead. He laughed, understanding the message. I carried my own authority now, but he was welcome to walk alongside me. At sunset, back on my porch, I finally set down the small, unlit birthday candle from Giovanni's. It had traveled through every chapter of this ordeal untouched. I lit it once, letting the flame burn steady in the fading light. Not for wishes, I whispered, for witness. When the candle had burned low, I filed the stamped protective order behind my revocation, and bank confirmations closed the lockbox with a final click and labeled the spine Authority Current. I sent 2 short texts before turning in for the night. To Maura dinner, my treat when you're free. To Damien Sunday stew, 2 p.m. Then I switched off the porch light myself. I am the principal of my own life. The rest is paperwork.